The child within you, that wounded, frightened fragment of your soul, is the architect of your adult misery. While you chase achievements, accumulate praise, and perform the elaborate dance of self-improvement, this inner child pulls the strings from the shadows, sabotaging every moment of genuine self-worth with its ancient hunger for external validation. You believe your low self-esteem comes from your failures, your imperfections, your lack of success. But the truth cuts deeper. Your self-esteem crumbles because you still see the world through the eyes of a child who learned that love was conditional, that worth was earned, that safety came only through pleasing others. That child, desperate and afraid, still lives in the chambers of your adult heart, whispering its poison into every moment of potential confidence. The adult you think you've become is nothing more than a sophisticated mask worn by this terrified child. And until you face this inner saboteur, until you drag it into the light and confront its desperate manipulations, you will remain a prisoner of your own unconscious patterns, forever seeking approval from a world that can never fill the void. This child carved into your soul. Listen carefully. Every time you doubt yourself before speaking in a meeting, that's the child. Every time you scroll through social media measuring your life against curated perfection, that's the child. Every time you apologize for taking up space, for having needs, for existing fully, that wounded fragment speaks through your adult mouth, sabotaging the very confidence you work so hard to build. From the moment you drew your first breath, they began the conditioning. Parents who withheld affection until you performed correctly. Teachers who praised you only when you colored inside the lines. Siblings who competed for the scarce resource of parental attention. Society that whispered constantly, "You are valuable only when you are useful. You are lovable only when you are good." This child learned to survive by becoming a chameleon, shape-shifting to match whatever others needed. It learned that its authentic self, messy, imperfect, real, was dangerous, unacceptable, worthy of rejection, so it buried that self deep, creating instead a false persona designed to harvest approval like a starving person hoards bread. The child became an expert in reading rooms, in sensing the emotional temperature of every interaction, in molding itself to fit the expectations it perceived. It learned to smile when it wanted to cry, to agree when it wanted to rebel, to shrink when it wanted to expand. Each compromise carved another piece from its authentic core, until what remained was a hollow shell, desperately seeking validation to fill the emptiness where a real self once lived. Now, decades later, this same child operates your adult life with the same survival strategies. When you achieve something, it doesn't celebrate. It immediately scans for the next threat, the next test, the next opportunity to prove worthiness. When someone compliments you, it doesn't absorb the praise. It dissects it for signs of insincerity, waiting for the inevitable rejection it believes must come. When you face criticism, it doesn't evaluate the feedback objectively. It collapses into the old terror of abandonment, hearing not words but the echo of every dismissal it ever endured. The inner child doesn't want you to have genuine self-esteem. Self-esteem would make it obsolete. If you truly valued yourself, this child would lose its purpose, its identity, its reason for existence. So it sabotages every moment of authentic confidence, every glimpse of inner peace, every possibility of self-acceptance. It keeps you small, needy, and dependent, because that's the only way it knows how to survive. Watch how it operates. It magnifies every criticism until it becomes proof of your fundamental unworthiness. It minimizes every success until it becomes mere luck or deception. It creates elaborate internal monologues that analyze, dissect, and ultimately dismiss any evidence of your value. This child has become a master manipulator not of others but of your own perception of reality. The philosophers spoke of this eternal struggle. Jung called it the shadow. Freud named it the unconscious. The mystics described it as the false self. But they all pointed to the same profound truth. We are not one unified being, but a collection of voices, a parliament of selves, where the wounded child often holds the most power, precisely because it screams the loudest from the depths of primal terror. This inner child exists in the realm of what Sartre called bad faith, the space where we deny our freedom to choose, where we pretend we are victims of forces beyond our control. The child believes it has no choice but to seek external validation, that it must earn love through performance, that its worth depends on others' opinions. This is the fundamental lie that keeps the adult trapped in cycles of self-doubt and people-pleasing. Nietzsche spoke of the eternal return, the idea that we are condemned to repeat the same patterns until we develop the strength to break them. The wounded child creates its own eternal return, cycling endlessly through the same emotional loops, seeking approval, receiving it temporarily, losing it inevitably, then beginning the desperate search again. This is not living. This is being, trapped in a psychological purgatory where the same drama plays out infinitely. But here lies the existential paradox that cuts to the bone. The very strategies the child developed to gain love and safety now prevent genuine intimacy and self-acceptance. The masks it created to be lovable make authentic love impossible. The performances it orchestrates to prove worthiness only reinforce the belief that the real self is not enough. The child operates from scarcity. There is never enough love, never enough approval, never enough safety. It cannot comprehend abundance, because its entire worldview was forged in deprivation. And so it turns your adult life into an endless quest for more. More achievement, more recognition, more proof that you matter. But no amount of external validation can fill the void created by a child who learned to abandon itself in the desperate hope of being chosen by others. Heidegger wrote of thrownness, the fact that we are thrown into existence without choosing our circumstances. The wounded child experiences this thrownness as abandonment, as evidence that it is fundamentally unwanted. But the mature adult can reframe this same thrownness as freedom, the recognition that because we didn't choose our beginning, we are free to choose our becoming. But there exists another way, a path that flows not from the child's desperate hunger, but from the adult's capacity for self-generation. This is the virtue of inner authority, the radical act of becoming your own source of validation, your own fountain of worth, your own parent to the aspects of yourself that never received the love they needed. Imagine a self-esteem that doesn't depend on performance, that doesn't crumble under criticism, that doesn't need constant feeding from external sources. This is not the fragile confidence built on achievements, but the unshakable knowing that arises when you recognize your intrinsic value, not because you've earned it, but because you exist, because consciousness itself is miraculous, because the very fact that you can question your worth proves you possess something worthy of questioning. This new virtue emerges when you stop asking the world to tell you who you are and start declaring it yourself. When you cease the endless auditions for love and approval and begin to love yourself with the fierce devotion you once reserved for others' opinions. When you transform from a beggar at the feast of validation into a sovereign ruler of your own emotional kingdom. The inner child seeks to receive. The awakened adult chooses to create. Where the child hoards praise like a miser hoards gold, the adult generates self-respect like the sun generates light, not because it must, but because it's the nature of who they've become. This adult doesn't perform worthiness, it embodies it. It doesn't chase love. It radiates it from the inexhaustible source it has discovered within. This is the virtue of psychological independence, not the cold independence of isolation, but the warm independence of completeness. The courage to stand alone in your own approval, to find in yourself the parent you never had, the approval you never received, the unconditional acceptance you spent your life seeking in others' eyes. Here, self-esteem becomes not a fragile flower that wilts under judgment, but a deep well that never runs dry because it's fed by your own recognition of your inherent wholeness. The adult learns to speak to the wounded child with compassion instead of impatience, with understanding instead of contempt. It doesn't try to kill the child or banish it, but transforms its energy. The child's sensitivity becomes discernment. Its need for love becomes the capacity to love deeply. Its fear of rejection becomes wisdom about where to invest emotional energy. The very traits that once sabotaged your confidence become the foundation of authentic strength. This adult no longer needs the world to be a certain way to feel valuable. It can receive criticism without collapsing, praise without inflating, indifference without withering. It has learned the secret that terrifies the wounded child. You can be completely acceptable to yourself even when others don't accept you. You can be valuable even when your value isn't recognized. You can be whole even when others see you as broken. Yet even this hard-won inner authority must learn the wisdom of retreat. There comes a time when the adult, having mastered self-validation, must release even the need to maintain constant confidence. For in the deepest teaching lies this truth. The soul that clings too tightly to any state, even self-esteem, becomes imprisoned by its own attachment. The wise adult learns to move through seasons of doubt without terror, through moments of uncertainty without collapse. It understands that confidence, like all emotional states, is temporary, a weather pattern of the psyche, not the sky itself. In this understanding comes the ultimate freedom, the freedom from needing to feel any particular way about yourself. Sometimes, the most profound act of self-love is to stop trying to love yourself. Sometimes the deepest confidence comes from releasing the need to be confident. Sometimes the truest strength emerges from admitting weakness without making it mean anything about your fundamental worth. The mature soul learns to dance with impermanence. It knows that everything, success and failure, praise and criticism, confidence and doubt, passes through awareness like clouds through an infinite sky. It stops identifying with the weather and begins to identify with the sky itself, vast, unchanging, unperturbed by whatever storms might rage within it. Sometimes the soul must withdraw into the silence beyond all self-concept, beyond the need to be confident or insecure, worthy or unworthy, approved or rejected. In this sacred emptiness, both the wounded child and the striving adult dissolve into something larger, the pure awareness that witnesses all states but is trapped by none. This is the death that precedes all true rebirth, the dying of the need to maintain any fixed identity, even a positive one. In the crucible of this silence, the false structures of self, both the child's desperate performances and the adult's hard-won confidence, are burned away, leaving only the eternal witness, the unshakable presence that needs nothing from the world because it lacks nothing within itself. Here, in the space beyond all self-esteem and its absence, beyond all confidence and its shadows, the soul finds its truest rest. Not in having good feelings about itself, but in the recognition that it is the space in which all feelings arise and pass away, untouched, unharmed, eternally whole. The deepest wisdom is knowing when to assert and when to surrender, when to build confidence and when to let it dissolve, when to heal the wounded child and when to let even that healing be released into the greater mystery of existence. This is not defeat. This is the ultimate victory over the very need for victory. Now comes your choice. Not the child's desperate grasping, not even the adult's noble self-creation, but the deepest choice of all, to step into the silence that transforms everything, to release your death grip on others' opinions and your own, to find in the space beyond all self-concept the unshakable peace that was always your birthright. The wounded child within you has been waiting not for validation, but for this. Your willingness to see it fully, to understand its pain without being controlled by it, to transform its survival strategies into wisdom without destroying its essential nature. It has been your teacher disguised as your tormentor, showing you through its very sabotage where your true freedom lies. Write these words if you're ready to begin this journey. I release the child's hunger and choose the silence that makes me whole. Let this be your declaration of independence from the endless cycle of seeking and finding, losing and regaining, the fragile self-esteem that keeps you trapped in the prison of others' judgment. The path ahead requires courage, not the child's desperate bravery in seeking love, not the adult's noble courage in self-creation, but the ultimate courage to rest in the vast silence where you discover you were never broken, never needed fixing, never required anyone's approval to be complete. In this silence, the inner child doesn't disappear. It transforms. No longer the saboteur of your peace, it becomes the guardian of your authenticity, the keeper of your spontaneity, the source of your creative fire. And you, no longer its victim or its master, Become its wise companion on the journey toward wholeness. The work begins now, in the space between these words and your next breath, in the choice to step beyond all the stories about who you are and discover who you've always been beneath the noise of self-doubt and self-assertion alike. The wounded child was never your enemy. It was the catalyst for your awakening, the darkness that taught you to seek light, the prison that showed you the value of freedom. Every moment of self-doubt can become a doorway to deeper self-understanding. Every criticism can become an opportunity to practice inner authority. Every collapse of confidence can become a gateway to the silence that needs no confidence, because it is the source from which all states arise and to which they return. Your journey toward authentic self-esteem is not about fixing what's broken. It's about recognizing what was never broken. It's not about becoming someone new. It's about remembering who you've always been beneath the layers of conditioning and compensation. The child within you sabotaged your confidence not out of malice, but out of love. A misguided attempt to keep you safe in a world it perceived as dangerous. Now you can offer it something better than safety. You can offer it truth. The truth that you are valuable not because you perform, but because you are. The truth that you are worthy not because you earn it, but because worthiness is your nature. The truth that you belong not because others choose you, but because existence itself has already chosen you by bringing you into being. Step into this truth. Let it transform not just your self-esteem, but your entire relationship with existence. And remember, the very fact that you can question your worth proves you possess something worthy of questioning. Consciousness itself, the miracle of awareness, the gift of being able to contemplate your own being. This is where your real life begins.